You've also been quoted as saying, we have to speak truth to power, which I love. What are some examples of when you've spoken truth to power when it comes to energy inequality and or D&I and had success?
I mean, I hope that I'm always speaking truth to power. I think for me, I want to, what I share in terms of my thoughts and ideas are absolutely what I believe to be true. And my biggest challenge is, how do I frame things in such a way that people receive it, in the way that I intended, because it's never really intended to be pointing a finger at somebody or placing blame. I'm always really very mindful and thoughtful about how we can move forward. But I also think that it's important to tell people what the truth is. And so I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I gave a speech, and I talk about this dynamic of what happens when you are the only and you walk into a room. So if you're the only woman and you walk into a room of all men, if you're the only person of color and you walk into a room of people who are not of color, or you're only a black person, only black woman, whatever that situation is, there's this moment in time when you walk into those spaces where at least one person, if not more, will look at you, and you know that they are trying to figure out what validates your presence in that room.
Yep.
We've all experienced it.
Yep.
And so I gave a speech in which I shared that that's what happens. And it was a mixed group of people, mostly men. And my message was, if you are the person who gives that look and you think that we don't know what that look is, we do know what that look is, right? We're very aware, hyper aware, particularly when you're the only person, of all those unseen things that, all unsaid things that go on in these spaces. And it was interesting because, not that some people were offended. I mean, if they were, I think I probably said, I may offend you, but I'm going to say this anyway, because I think you need to know that we are fully aware that this is how this dynamic exists. But that there were people, men afterwards, who were like, wow, I actually never knew that people saw that. And I was like,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
This was recent. This was recently.
Within the last year or two.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so part of it is, right, when I say speaking truth to power, is understanding that for us, the things that were really obvious, for some people, for whatever reason, are completely oblivious to it. And so, I'm lucky that I get to do that all the time.
Yeah.
And I get to walk away if people don't like what I have to say. Like, it doesn't, right? This is what I think and feel, and this is why I think and feel it. And I'm never really trying to be mean, but I am saying that if we are not able to be honest if we're not able to be honest about what it is today, how exactly do we expect it to be different tomorrow?
So you've spoken on the topic of energy inequality many times. And you've emphasized that 1 in 3 U.S. households have trouble paying energy bills, and 1 in 5 have to decide between medicine, food, rent, or utilities, noting that these challenges correlate to race, not geography. Do you see any signs of positive change when it comes to this issue?
I do, in that I think people are really starting to think more about what the cost is to consumers, and the overall cost as well as the benefit. And so it can't just be, this thing is better for you, say health-wise, but it's really expensive. And my point is always not to say that one is necessarily better than the other, but it is to not give people false choices. It is to say, let's be realistic, right? We all want, I think, cleaner air. I think the country is absolutely moving to more renewable energy. We've got to address climate change. We have to address it actually pretty quickly, right? This is not something that we should all be sitting around and kind of waiting out. None of that is acceptable. But we also have to really be clear with people that there's an economic cost to some of this stuff. And we need to just let people know what that is, and try to do the best that we can for the best for everybody. A lot of times when I cite that statistic, what I'm trying to convey to folks is that I think if you develop policy that benefits the least of us, and the least of us in this example are those people who are spending more, right? It is not okay for anybody to have to choose between buying medicine and eating. Like, in what world is that ever okay? And I want people to feel as passionately as I do that it's not okay. That it's not okay that 1/3 of American families have to make that decision every single month. We should collectively be appalled by that number, because that's insane, because we need both of those things.
You were going to say something that was very interesting. You were about to say something, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if we put policies in place that benefit low income people, that will benefit all of us more. Is that what you were going to
Yeah, I
say?
mean, I do think that our policy should deal with the least of us, and
Yeah.
and not just energy. I think all of our policies. That's my personal opinion.
I agree.
I
Yeah.
think if we're going to talk about unemployment, we should be talking about why are there certain groups of people in this country who seem to be systemically unemployed all the time. They're the first ones hit. That's a problem.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the reasons are behind that problem, but I do think that if you begin to solve that problem, there are a lot of other things that go along with that also start to fall back and disappear. And I think the same is for energy policy, that if we think about how do we make policy that is best for those communities and people who are suffering the most, those people who are spending more than anybody else should be spending, those people who have the highest adverse health impacts than anybody else. The rest of us will be okay, but you've got to get it, I think, right for those who are suffering the most, and then move in the opposite direction, as opposed to helping the people who are doing all right and then saying we're going to get to everybody else.